How to be a Dungeon Master. The term Dungeon Master, DM for short, was coined by Dungeons & Dragons copyright in the early 70s, but has now become a catch-all term for anyone who runs a role-playing game, rebounds per game. Technically, the title DM applies to Dungeons & Dragons, whereas GM, Game Master, refers to the DM of an rebounds per game other than Dungeons & Dragons. Being a Dungeon Master sounds easy. You control everything and just tell people what they can and can't do, right? Actually, that couldn't be further from the truth. You are charged with both creating the details and challenges of the adventure while maintaining a realistic continuity of events in your scenario. You must also have a good knowledge and understanding of the rules of the game. While a fair DM can make an enjoyable experience for everyone, a poor one can ruin any game. The following information is biased toward D&D, though it is more or less general enough to be applied to any rebounds per game. Understand what a DM does. The descriptions you may have heard of a Dungeon Master probably range from the one who does all the work to "you are God here." Those descriptions are usually exaggerations from people who are either ignorant of what a DM really is or the extreme interpretation of a half-truth. As a DM, you control everything and everyone that is not a player character, PC for short. That means everyone or anything the players may come across or interact with is controlled by you. However, the goal of any rebounds per game should be a fun time for everyone involved. Everyone cannot be stressed enough. Your responses to the players, the situations you present, the challenges you create, the stories you build together, all of it should be balanced so as to provide an enjoyable experience for you and your players. What you are not is against the PCs. If your goal is to destroy the player characters any chance you get, then you are doing it wrong. Rather, you should strive to be fair and create an enjoyable experience. This means that if the characters are having a hard time, nerf the monsters but don't change how they would behave. Know the rules. To be a fair DM, you are expected to have a strong grasp of the rules of the game. It may be helpful to think of yourself as an impartial judge in this respect. Just as a judge cannot do her job without knowing the law, a DM cannot run a game without knowing the rules of the game. To aid in this, most RPGs provide basic entry books known as core rule books. Anything considered core is what you need to have, at very least, a passing familiarity with. In D&D, the core books are the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master Guide and the Monster Manual. The rest should not be considered necessary for running a game. You describe the surroundings, manage the plot, and administer all of the elements of the game, including determining the outcome of battles between players and dungeon dwellers. If your players encounter a creature, choose a plan of battle. It may be up to you to roll the dice to decide the outcome, and although the rules apply specific guidelines, you may use your own judgment to work that outcome in the best way to maintain the flow and continuity of the game. It's a daunting task, but it will become easier with time, patience, and practice. Prepare properly. For some DMs, the thrill of writing their own adventures and stories to present to their players is the reason for doing it. Others like the fact that they control everything. And then there are those who do it simply because they don't think anyone else will do a good enough job. Regardless of why you do it, how you get ready is what breaks or makes the game. The ways you can prepare could fill its own wiki, but here are the basics for first-time DMs. Remember that everyone will be comfortable with different ways and it is best to only use what works for you. Don't try to force something that doesn't feel right. Again, the end result should always be a fun game for everyone. If it feels like work, don't hesitate to lower your work pace. If you have no time in between games, consider running modules. They will be presented for characters between a certain levels, with challenges scaled to fit. This is the easiest and fastest way to run a game, as most of everything is done for you. The only thing you have to do is read the adventure. It is suggested that you reread a few pages ahead of where you stopped at every session right before the next session, to refresh your memory for the game at hand. If you have a few hours to devote between games, running modules is still a strong option. However, you may want to rewrite parts of the module to fit the game or particular storylines you're running with the PCs. Changing descriptions of locations or replacing treasure found in the module with items better suited for your players are good and easy places to start. As you progress in skill, you may start lifting whole encounters from one module and writing it into another. Not only does this allow you to essentially pick out the best parts of an otherwise so-so module, but players who may have read or run through the module before will be in for a surprise. Writing your own adventures is a possibility, though for new DMs it is still recommended that you run a module first, so you're only focusing on one concept at a time, learning the rules. In time you will be more inclined to change things and write new scenarios yourself. Pulling encounters from published works and tying them together would be a good start. They can then slowly be replaced with your own works. What you ultimately want to achieve is that your campaign is like a movie you would be interested in watching, which invokes a sense of mystery. Many dungeon masters spend a long time reading the rule books over and over again. This is actually a form of procrastination. If you don't have anyone to play with, don't spend time planning scenarios. Keep your ideas in the back of your mind and instead learn to generally become a good storyteller. The only way to become a valuable game master is to gain practical experience and learn from each mistake as it brings you closer to perfection. Take notes. During and immediately after the game session, be sure to jot down a few notes about what the players did, what your NPCs did, how your other NPCs and bad guys will respond to new events, the names of NPCs you may have made up on the fly, and any other details you may find important.